And that's about it for the slider notice. Now we need to style a header tag which is going to go inside of here. Obviously we don't just want this text hanging around at the top of this div, we want a header to be in the middle of the document. So I'm going to go ahead and style slide notice header 3. So any header 3 tags that appear within the slide notice div will take this style, and that is position, relative, padding we're going to set to 0 pixels, and the margin we're going to set to 0 pixels as well. That's important so we don't get the padding that's default for headers. And then the top I'm going to set to 25%, so this will align it in the middle of this div. Okay, so at the moment we've just got some text inside here. Let's go ahead and create some header tags. Now eventually inside of here will be the replaced text that we're going to supply our notice function with when we create it. So for the moment you can just see we've got the text here. We've got it aligned in the center of this div and we haven't got any padding around it. It's important to note that if we were to take out this padding in this margin option that we get some kind of padding and the alignment's all wrong. So we want the padding and the margin to 0 pixels. Okay, so now what we're going to go ahead and do is actually create our notice function. So remember, when we click our button, we do whatever we have to do and then we call the slide notice function. And the slide notice function is going to take a text parameter. So let's just go and call this, although we haven't defined it. So I want to call slide notice, and inside here I want to supply it with some text. So obviously we've associated all actions inside of this function with saving user details, and therefore we can go ahead and create some text in here. So your settings have been saved. Now obviously if you were updating user sessions, you would ensure that user settings have been successfully updated before you called this function. So for example, you could go ahead and maybe create some kind of if statement which would check whether an HTTP request had been successful, and you could output an appropriate error message. So for example, if the settings hadn't been updated and that was in a particular block, you could adjust the message accordingly, and you could call this more than once as well. So you could call it twice on a page, but obviously depending on the result of the settings that are being saved, it would be output in a different way. So now that we've called the function, it doesn't actually exist yet, we want to define this inside notice.js. So let's go ahead and define the function. Again, this is called slide notice, and we take some text in here. Okay, so this text here is going to be taken into account inside of this block, and we are going to change the content of this div and then slide it down, and then we're going to delay for a while and slide it up. So we need to have the display on this set to none, so back to our style.css file, and now you can see that nothing here. When we click save, nothing happens because we haven't done anything inside our slide notice function, which is called when this button is clicked. So inside notice.js we want to go ahead and actually show this slider. So we reference this as slide notice. Remember, our div is called slide notice, so we're using a selector to select this div. Now we want to go ahead and do something with it, so we can just first of all say show. So this will when we click this button, obviously we're calling this function. When this function is called, we're going to show slide notice. So let's go ahead and test it out. Click save. You can see that this div is now shown. So that's the first part of it. We've enabled the button to show this particular div based on this function. But now we want to make it obviously applicable to the tutorial, what we're actually doing. So what we want to do is we want to apply some HTML to this div, and the HTML is going to be some header tags, so some header 3 tags. Remember, we specifically styled header 3 tags to work within this, and let's go ahead and append just in the middle of these pluses, so we're outputting a header 3 tag and then some content and then another header 3 tag, and in this case it will be text, the text that we supplied to the slide notice function here. So now that that's happened, we can go ahead and show that again. So we're appending on HTML and then we are binding show to that. So now what's going to happen is when we click save, we have this message appear, your settings have been saved. So now what we want to do is actually animate it. So instead of show, we're going to use slide down. And what this is going to do, it's just going to change the animation. There are various properties you can define within here, but we're not going to be looking at those in this tutorial. So now when we click save, you see that slid down quite nicely. The animation has taken place and the slider is at its height, which is 50 pixels. Now what we want to do is slide it back up again. So if we were to use, say, slide up, this would actually slide the div up into the top of the document, but the problem is it does it instantly. So as soon as the first animation is finished, the second animation kicks in and slides this back up again. So inside here we want to bind on the delay property, or the delay function, and we want to give this a specific time, and the time is in milliseconds, so I'm going to choose 1500 milliseconds. And what that will do is it will slide it down and then slide back up again. So now that we've done this, we're essentially done. It was extremely easy to implement this just by creating this function and allowing this button to call this function once it's been clicked. So what happens if we want to go ahead and create another button, for example? Let's go ahead and create another button next to this save button. And now I'm going to demonstrate how easy this is to actually use with multiple buttons. So the type of this is a button. The value of this is, let's just go ahead and say delete account, for example. I mean, we're not actually going to be creating this functionality. And we'll give this an ID as well of delete account. So now that we've done this, we have this delete account button, which we can now apply the same function to. So inside buttons.js, we want to go ahead and reference delete account, which is the button, and we append the same event handler to this. And inside here, we create a function, pull these down just so we can read it a bit better, and we want to go ahead and slide notice. Okay, so now what we can just do is say your account has been deleted. Obviously you wouldn't delete the account straight off, but that's nothing to do with the tutorial. It's just to demonstrate the slider. We now have this delete account button. When I click on it, your account has been deleted. So just in like 10-15 seconds we've implemented this delete account button. When we click the save button, we get a different message coming up. So overall, the benefit of using this function and allowing this text to be passed to it will allow us to create this nice animation here and putting these header 3 tags just inside of this div allows us to call it upon any button click. So we can just call this function multiple times in our application without having to replicate this code, which is essentially the point of a function. So you can see how easy it is to implement this. We've used quite a lot of CSS, but it's very basic CSS that just allows us to create a div at the very top of the page that's going to overlap all the other content. So you could probably now go ahead and implement this into your website extremely easily.